But welcome all of you here tonight in the museum. We have a full house, and it looks like we have a good handful also on zooming in. I'm Heather Sontag with the Badger History Group, Secretary of the Badger History Group Board, and I just wanted to welcome you all to the first night of the 2023-24 lecture series. My basic job right now is to say, hold your questions till the end. In the museum, you'll know when we get there, and also on Zoom, if you could please enter questions into the chat, we'll read them off towards the end. And I'll prompt you when we get to that time. I'd now like to hand it over to Dan Halling, board member on our education committee. Thank you so much.
Education and events, it's called, and I guess I'm chair. So I got to put together this year's lecture series. Really excited about that. And you can go to our website and look at more specific details about each of the speakers, but I'll just go through them really quickly. After Melanie tonight, we have Joel Jansen. He works for SpecPro, who works for the Army, and they are in charge of monitoring the contamination of the soil and especially the water. So that should be interesting. That's next month. And all our lectures this year are on the second Wednesday of the month rather than Thursday. So, and then Kurt Miney will be giving a talk about the reuse process, the first 5 years of the reuse process from 97 to 2002. Randy Palma will talk about the land stewardship of the Ho-Chunk land here. Mike Mossman will hopefully be giving us some comic relief with cartoon propaganda from World War II. Frank Wolf will be giving his expertise again on the production process, this time specifically on bulb powder. That is in February. In March, Ori Eilertson, our vice president, will be talking about the Houston Cemetery and Freethinkers Hall, which is about a 7 iron east of the east perimeter fence. So and Berlin Mueller, our curator, will be talking about buildings that were on this site in January of 1942. And then Mike Dock will close it out in June, talking about different things culled from 40 years of his research and writing about this place. So with that, I'll hand it over to our president, Mike Mossman.
Hello, and I'm going to introduce Melanie tonight, but before I do that, I want to just have a shout out to a couple people, as long as we're talking about art tonight, a couple people that have been real important to the Badger History Group and to the future and present of the former ammunition plant. One is Virginia Metcalf, who I think is online, or if she's not yet, she's going to be. And Virginia, we're glad to have you here. Virginia was a real advocate for the future, a conservation future, and respecting the history of Badger back in the days when the plant was closed in '97. She also, with her partner, Mary Eagle, commissioned the Sauk Prairie Remembered painting that became sort of the vision for restoration of the land here. And also I want to say thanks to Jill Metcalf. Jill is in the audience tonight, and she was one of the photographers in Inside the Fence project that the Badger History Group led back in the late 99, 2000, 2001, in a way to get people who weren't able to come in and see the plant to actually kind of understand the plant, its history, and its transitioning that it was going through at the time. So thanks you guys. Melanie is a teacher and friend to many of us. Born in Baraboo, raised in the Dells. She'll talk more about her history here, but she's an artist, cultural arts educator, and has done a lot to engage people in Ho-Chunk ways and in seeing the land and our ancestry and our traditions as being part of the present. This is really part of the history group's mission as well. We see history in sort of 5 parts here. We see multiple histories on this piece of land, probably as many as there are people and animals and activities that have gone on here. They each have a history, but we usually sort of divide it conveniently into like sort of the natural history, the geology, and the native landscapes that were here, related, of course, to the indigenous people as the second chapter, and ongoing to present, and the chapter of the Euro-American farm community that was here for a century, and then the plant, and then the last chapter being really important history that's happened since 1997 here. And it's interesting that Melanie's story touches on most of these aspects of the Badger history. Part of our mission our mission statement is to learn from the past, engage with the present, and guide our shared future. That history is parts of our lives, that's active part. And Melanie, as much as anybody, really exemplifies that. And it's something we can learn from her. So, is there anything else, Melanie? Thank you.
Anachi ni ganagawinit. Ho-Chunk Rajada, Chapshapyungenga, Egi Maikare Rajada, Melanie Tallmadge-Sainz. Did you guys get the gist of that?
Yes.
Okay, so we have some people who are Ho-Chunk sensitive to language. That's good. For those of you who have no idea what I just said, I greeted you in the language of the Ho-Chunk people, the language that's been spoken on this land that we're on right now for the longest period of time, since in our interpretation, the beginning of time. And it's my sincere pleasure to kind of kick off this lecture series for my friends. And so many of you guys, I'm so proud to call you my friends. And by the end of this, I look forward to meeting new friends. So this opportunity gives me a chance to share some of my personal background with you, as well as my professional background. So I'm not one to like read all the bullet points, because I have a feeling you all can read. But I was, like Mike said, I was born in Baraboo, raised in the Dells, educated at UW La Crosse for several years. And then I did one certificate course at UW-Madison. I also went to Arizona State University for both my undergrad and graduate work. I've taught all over the world. I've taught in Japan, I've taught Chinese students, I've taught in Guatemala and all around the what we call the Great Turtle Island, or the United States. And I've had the opportunity of spending a lot of time for me personally and my professional growth, and for my family and relationship in the homelands of my people, which are the Ho-Chunk of Wisconsin, as well as in the homeland or the birthplace of my husband, Felix, who's here this evening. So we go back and forth between here and Arizona. So while I love Wisconsin and I really treasure all the memories I have of shoveling snow and things like that, it just is what's going on with me right now in terms of being a snowbird and spending my winters down in Wisconsin. All right, let's see if I can advance. I'm a professional extemporaneous speaker, so I'm just going to speak about these working things. So, I've had the opportunity of working here at this land called Maa Wákąčąk. Can you say that? Maa Wákąčąk. Ma means earth in Ho-Chunk. Wákąčąk is one of those, thank you, one of those words that it's really hard to translate directly into English. But if I could describe experiences, like my children had the opportunity of visiting Italy with their Latin teacher, and they went to, what's the big cathedral? St. Patrick's Cathedral? St. Peter's. St. Peter's. And so my son and his Latin teacher were translating all the Latin around the walls and things like that. And the way my kids described it, because they were raised Catholic, when they went into that building, they felt a sense of sacredness. That's what Wákąčąk means, sacred land. I know some people in the Dells or in the Baraboo area interpret it as Spirit Lake, or, because of Wákąčąk or Devil's Lake, what it's called right now. But for the Ho-Chunks, the land here is called Maa Wákąčąk, sacred land. And just over the bluff, that big pond there is called Wákąčąk, sacred lake. Thank you for advancing that. I appreciate that. So we're going to talk a little bit about myself as an artist, and then a little bit about myself as a professional nonprofit organizational administrator. I'm going to start with art first. So I myself was born and raised here in this area. So many of you know, if you're my age, I'm 62, Native peoples, Ho-Chunks, have been around here creating fabulous art for decades, for generations. So the two big influences on me and my art and my creativity, I'm going to start with these two beautiful women at the upper left and upper right. In the Ho-Chunk way, they're sisters. The woman on the left is my grandmother, Emma Big Bear Holt. She was from Marquette, Iowa, originally from Wisconsin, but preferred to stay where her home was before she passed away in Marquette. And this woman right here is my mother's biological mother, my grandmother, Rose White Rabbit Miner. Both were fabulous and master basket weavers. So growing up in the Dells area, my mom and dad owned and operated the Winnebago Public Indian Museum 4.5 miles north of the Dells. So they sold the baskets from both these amazing makers. We had a chipotoke, another word I want you to say, chipotoke. Can you say that? Chipotoke. Chi means wood, poto means round, K means house, wooden roundhouse, chipotoke, or wigwam, I've heard them. So we had a wigwam set up in front of the museum, significantly made for these women so they could come out and interface with the public and weave baskets. And Grandma's basket is also in the Smithsonian collection in Washington, D.C. now. So they were master basket weavers. What I also noticed and picked up as a child, they were also masters at selling their baskets. So as an artist, these wonderful art schools are cultivating these great artists, contemporary artists. Oftentimes they teach us how to make wonderful art, but they neglect to teach us how to sell it. And these women were the ones that I learned from in terms of watching how they sold, told their stories, and developed relationships with their patrons. The two people I think that had the most influence on me and my art and my creativity are these fabulous people on the bottom. That's my mother, Bernadine Miner Tallmadge, and my father, Roger Little Eagle Tallmadge. I inherited Dad's gift to gab. So he was a Kentucky colonel. He was a lieutenant governor in Kiwanis. Both Mom and Dad worked here at what they called the powder plant at the time. Mom started working. I was just talking with my sister this week about Mom's participation as an employee here. She started working at 19 years old. And my dad was also working here a little bit later in his early 20s. And they were not married when they worked here. So they didn't know each other. They didn't meet each other until they started working in the Dells area at one of the trading posts. And that's where they met, and the rest is history. Mom and Dad did own and operate the Winnebago Public Indian Museum from 1953 until the early 2000s is when Mom decided to retire. And so I literally grew up in a museum. This was the grand room of the museum. There were 3 rooms of museum and 3 rooms of trading post. And so
It was on there, so we couldn't see you.
oh, okay. Well, I was hoping you wouldn't see me. But to have rooms filled with creativity, to meet the artist, to learn from them. I'll never forget talking to Kim Crowley or Kim Hall. You might know her here. She's a wonderful basket weaver, lives in Baraboo. But her mom and dad, Sydney and Christine Hall, came from Wittenberg and sold their baskets. And so to learn the language of basket weaving, the Ho-Chunk words we use, that was, I think, the best gifts I could have ever gotten as a child. So I just am so grateful to the folks that influenced me. I'm not seeing how to advance. All right,
There
there
it
it
goes.
goes.
Yeah, it takes. the two.
Okay. Okay, so you're advancing. Okay. So I had some significant life-changing events that brought me here today. One of which was realizing that when I was creative and I made a product because of my creativity, I could also make money, just like my grandmas did and my mom and dad did. The photo on the left-hand side is me at age 7. I think it's the summer between first and second grade. I loved hanging out with my grandma Rose. She was just so patient and kind of to give you a little bit of backstory. Okay, your mother, let's say your mother hypothetically has sisters, okay? In the Eurocentric way, your mother's sisters are your aunts, okay? In the Ho-Chunk way, our family system is different. So my mother had 5 sisters. I don't call my mother's sisters my aunts or my chuis in Ho-Chunk. They're my mothers. So I have 5 mothers on my mother's side. All their children, your mother's sister's children, you call them your cousins. Yeah, that's a very Eurocentric term. Most native tribes here in the United States don't observe the relationship of cousin that came from across the big pond. My mother's sister's children, there's 27 of us. We all call ourselves brothers and sisters. So we have a big family. So when we were around grandma, it wasn't just myself hanging around with grandma. There's about roughly 27 kids around grandma. So talk about someone being creative and someone, producing. I know myself when I'm at the studio, which is just a couple blocks away. Thank you. I like being by myself. I've always flown solo and felt very confident and comfortable that way. So I can just imagine myself with 27 little grandchildren running around, and she was still very productive. So again, I admired her. But the basket that I'm holding under my arm is the first basket that grandma helped me to make that I sold. And I think I got 75 cents for that basket that year. I proceeded to make more baskets that summer to the point where I saved $75 that summer, and I was able to buy my first horse. And so I showed horses all through elementary, middle, and high school with the 4-H group that I was a part of in Adams County. When I was in elementary school, I was shy. I didn't talk a lot. I'm the youngest out of my siblings, and because everyone was already either in school or out of the house by the time I started kindergarten and first grade. Prior to starting school, I was by myself a lot. I had a great creativity. I made my own Barbie clothes, and I was very creative as a little child. So I enjoyed being by myself, and coming into school, it was different. So I tend to be very quiet, and the school officials, the teachers were kind of concerned about me because I didn't talk very much. And so I was, I guess, encouraged by my teachers and so on and so forth to find places that I felt more comfortable. And where I found that was the art room. At the Dells Elementary School, when I attended Wisconsin Dells school from kindergarten through 12th grade, that was my happy place, was the art room. When I was in 4th grade, and that's me, when I was in 4th grade, my art teacher, Sandy Kraus, and we're still friends today on Facebook. So if you're listening, Sandy, hi, and hope you're doing well. But she recognized something in me, and she heard about this art competition that was happening statewide in commemoration of the 300th anniversary of Marquette and Jolier's trip here to Wisconsin. And she said, Melanie, I think you should create something. You should submit a piece. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to call any attention to myself. I just want to hide in my corner and do my art and stuff like that. And she must have seen something in me. And she didn't badger me, pardon pun, but she encouraged me. And through her encouragement, I took her up on that. I thought, geez, I'm going to spend my recesses in the art room, before school, after school in the art room. Of course I want to do this, and I want to hang out with my favorite teacher as well. So this is a piece that I developed for that piece. We submitted it, and it was like over a month before we heard anything. And so I had kind of assumed that, you know, I didn't win or anything. So that was good. It was fun just going through the process. But I'll never forget the day that Ron Pekarski comes into our 4th grade classroom, and he points at me and he goes like this. And I was like, oh God, I'm in trouble. I threw those snowballs on the playground and I know I shouldn't have done that. So anyway, I'm standing next to him and he pulls out this letter from his coat pocket and reads that Melanie Tallmadge won this art competition. And I was like, wow, never won anything before in my life. I won my first 10-speed bike. And then I got to get flown by Pabst Brewing. They sponsored the competition. So me and Mark, he's the other 4th grade person that won. He wrote an essay. They put us on the Learjet owned by Pabst, flew us to Washington, D.C. And lo and behold, as we're looking at all the sculptures related to Wisconsin, here comes the President of the United States down the hallway, and he gets to tell me how he enjoys my art. So I thought that was pretty cool. So when I got back to the Dells that year, I started calling myself an artist. So that's where it began. Through my art teacher and all my other wonderful art teachers and leaders and coaches and club sponsors through the Dells High School, I became more confident. My dad, I don't know, some of you, I heard somebody walked in wanted to know about Roger Little Eagle or Roger Tallmadge. But my dad was a mover and shaker here in Wisconsin in the late 70s. He was the first Native person appointed to the Governor's Commission of Tourism. Like I said, he was a Kentucky colonel. He was a lieutenant governor in Kiwanis. Dad traveled all over the world on behalf of the United States. In 1979, in November, he was asked by the State Department to represent all Native peoples from the United States in a brand new oil complex in Dhahran, Saudi Arabia. And at that time, I don't know if you remember, but that's during Carter's administration when the hostages situation they were dealing with. So there was really high security in the Middle East. And I think that tension really got to my dad and my brothers that accompanied him to the point my dad had a fatal heart attack in Saudi Arabia and passed away. So with that said, I was going into my freshman year of college that year. And it was a challenge, but what I was really, I think, wanting to do the most, as well as starting college and that exciting part of my chapter of my life, but I really wanted to support my mom in the best way that I could. And one of the things that Mom always encouraged me to do was to be more of a speaker and a cultural arts presenter. And she thought a good way of doing that would be to run for different titles. So in 79, Dad was still alive when I ran for Miss Great Lakes, and I won that. And then that afforded me the opportunity to run for a national title called Miss Indian America. Dad passed away in 79. I was eligible to run, but I just couldn't do it without my dad because my talent, he and I were going to do a jazz boogie woogie duet, and he wasn't there to do it with me. So I needed to just put it on the back burner. And my mom kept the application. And the next year I had thought, oh, maybe Mom forgot about it. So I don't have to worry about it anymore. But she remembered. She gave me the application partially filled out for me. She's so nice to do that for me. We filled the rest out together, submitted it, and I ran for the title. I was first Native woman east of the Mississippi to actually win the title of Miss Indian America in 1980. And, you know, it was a really great opportunity for me because if you don't know anything about the history of Miss Indian America, it started in the late 50s. And it started because the community of Sheridan, Wyoming, which was the home of Chief Joe Medicine Crow, he was given the Medal of Freedom by President Obama. When Chief Joe Medicine Crow, who served in the Army, came back from serving during World War II, he was met with signs in the windows of Sheridan, Wyoming stores that said, no dogs, no Indians allowed. So he took it upon himself after recognizing that he put his life on the line, and then he comes back to his own home community only to see that he can't even go grocery shopping in the corner store. He took it upon himself to kind of collaborate with other community members to do something about this issue of racial inequality in the Sheridan, Wyoming area. So what they did was they went through the Sheridan Wyo rodeo system, opened the queen position to not just the dominant culture or white people there of Sheridan, but opened it also to the Crow community, which is one of the largest native tribes in the United States. And lo and behold, because it was the audience who made the decision of who won the title of the queen of the Sheridan rodeo, the Crow people showed up, and because of the loudness of their applause, she won that title. And that was kind of the genesis of Miss Indian America. They recognized what a community building event that was. And so I am a social justice advocate. Being a part of that experience, traveling all around the United States, both Native and non-Native communities, speaking on behalf of our Ho-Chunk people and the history and the importance of education of our Native peoples, it was really a game changer for me. And it's actually what brought me to Arizona. Okay, go on to the next. I share this image because I was at a meeting recently where a person in this planning meeting shared with the entire group that the Indians used to be here, but they're not here anymore. Truth, we're still here. And we're all over the place, not just in the little area, that little dot, which we know as Sauk County in the Western Great Lakes area. We're all throughout what we call Turtle Island. And, you know, of course, this map, which was created in the late 20s by, I think it was Cal State or one of the museums there with the University of California system, it shows dividing lines. Native peoples were not about borders and walls. We did a lot of intertribal commerce, a lot of trading, a lot of traveling. There were merchants that knew the Turtle Island better than anyone and traveled and, you know, brought things like black obsidian up here to Wisconsin for my ancestors to make things from. So this really shows at least, you know, the contiguation of Native peoples throughout the continent. And we have the next slide, please. And then this one brings it home a little bit closer because I get to talk about the Ho-Chunk people here in Wisconsin and Sauk County. We have several districts. There's 4 districts now within our Ho-Chunk tribe. And just to let you know, I am a tribal member, but I do not work for the Ho-Chunk Nation, and I've never worked for them. But I try to share as much information as I can because a lot of people, unfortunately, don't know, you know, a lot of details about our tribe. But there's almost 700 Ho-Chunk people that live here in Sauk County. The other largest county is Jackson County, where our administrative office is located in Black River Falls. So I think that says what, there's over 1,000, I think, in Jackson County. I can't see the number, but at least that gives you an idea that Native peoples, specifically the Ho-Chunk, are all throughout Wisconsin, not just here in the South Central or Western Great Lakes area. And then this kind of gives you a perspective of Ho-Chunk people also live in other states throughout the United States. So we ourselves, when our tribe was organized and we got federal recognition in 1963, our leaders, and my mother was one of them, the original tribal council, really worked toward establishing a land base. And that land base wasn't technically called a reservation. However, now that we're coming into the 2000s and beyond, some of that terminology gets carried over from the way that the federal government works. So if you go beyond the guard station here at Badger into our land that we call Maa Wákąčąk, you'll see that the signs use that term reservation to describe the land there. So it's either trust lands or reservation. That's the terminology that we're using to describe the lands that we have throughout the state of Wisconsin, the trust lands. Okay, can you advance it? Oh, there you go. All right. So the topic really for this evening, and I don't want to take up too much of your time because I know I'm running over a little bit now, but I just wanted to share with you as an artist that this land that we're all on right now, the tribe now calls Maa Wákąčąk, it's got a spirit. It's got an inspirational quality to it. Where our studio is located is right there. Okay. It's in the old firehouse. And when I say our, I mean the nonprofit organization that I launched 10 years ago, which is called Little Eagle Arts Foundation. So we have roughly about 52 artists on our roster right now. We hold pop-up events there. We do classes. We have lectures. We've hosted artists in residence there. But it's in such a wonderful place. It's south of Maa Wákąčąk, Sacred Lake. We have about 5,500 acre or 1,550 acres that were returned to the Ho-Chunk people after many years of negotiation. So I'm really thankful to our current president, John Greendeer, for making that possible in 2015. And the way we invite and welcome people when we do have events over there, and of course, when we do, I want to encourage you all to come and see us at our Maa Wákąčąk studio. When we do invite people, we do that in the spirit of reconciliation. The Ho-Chunks were forcibly removed from the state of Wisconsin between 1820 and 1870. Many of my relatives still live on the reservation in Nebraska. But because of our chiefs, both Yellow Thunder and Blue Wing, many of my ancestors who were forcibly removed walked back and were able to stay here in Wisconsin because of Yellow Thunder and Blue Wing. So now that some of us are here and still some of us are over there, we want to establish and maintain that kinship with the land, okay? And we need to do that for our own people, again, with the spirit of reconciliation. Once we took over the studio space, that's when I learned about another forced removal that took place here at Badger Ordnance. That's where all the European farmers, right before World War II, again, the federal government did it to us. They're going to do it again to other people. They forcibly removed and gave 30 days for those people to move. So I can just imagine, you know, the horrific just experiences that they had, and to see the stories and pictures of people actually moving their homes from this land. So, you know, having the place that we do in terms of Maa Wákąčąk Studio that Little Eagle Arts Foundation manages provides an opportunity for both the Native peoples and the non-Native peoples to come together in a spirit of reconciliation and community building. And that's I think the most important thing that this land has offered us is that spirit of community. So I wanted to just kind of show you guys a little bit of my art. And like I say, I want to be respectful of your time because I think I should have been over by now. So I'll just kind of go through these last slides. So I myself am a fiber artist. And the fibers that I work with are the porcupine quills, the quills of the North American porcupine. It's a true American art form. I was asked by a group of Aborigine people in Australia to do a quill workshop to bring back kind of perhaps some of the lost skills that they had. But the quills from those type of porcupines in New Zealand and Australia, they're about this long. They're about this thick. And it's impossible. You can't do the same thing you do with the smaller quills from our North American porcupine. The quills themselves are made from keratin, the same material that makes up our fingernails and our toenails. They're like spaghetti noodles. So if you use them dry, they're very coarse and, you know, they break very easy. And if you use them moist, again, like spaghetti noodles, they're very flexible. So what I do after taking them off the animal, cleaning them, sorting them, and dyeing them, I make them into my art. And I use embroidery methods. Can you advance it? Thank you. to create a variety of mostly functional items that I enhance with the porcupine quills. I also do artist social commentary. So this particular series that I did, I think I did about 8 or 9 in the Endangered Wildflower series. I'm really addressing man's effect on nature. I mean, we have these beautiful flowers that are in the endangered category. And why is that? An opportunity for us to talk about that in terms of man and women's, you know, the damage that we've done to the planet and to our surroundings in terms of the land is something that a simple pouch can evoke a really powerful conversation. I learned the art of porcupine quill embroidery from my uncle, Mike Wákąčąk. And after the program is done, I have a pouch that I made in his honor. And he taught me that, you know, there's little animals, little insects that like to eat both the quills from feathers and porcupine quills. And if you worked on smoked deer skin, there's something about the tannins in the smoking process that adheres to the surface of the deer skin, that those little bugs that like to destroy our earrings and quill work and stuff, they don't like either that smell or that taste. And so you'll see most of my work, I'm working on natural brain tan smoked deer skin. This is a larger bandolier bag that I made. This is in the collection at the Autism Museum in Los Angeles. And I like to use a variety of natural materials. So here I'm using a combination of black trade cloth that was the first material made available to Ho-Chunk people through trade, and a combination then of the traditional methods of the quill embroidery on leather. I also do contemporary pieces where I'm repurposing different clasps and things that I find at antique stores. It's something that I really enjoy doing. And I think it really shows our need as human beings to address all the stuff that we have, and how rather than putting it into landfills, we can repurpose it and use it in very creative means. And again, this is another one of the wildflower series. I also do contemporary pieces. This piece was on exhibit. I curated an exhibit of Ho-Chunk art. I think it was 2019, right before COVID. We featured 14 different Ho-Chunk artists, and I worked with Beth Bashara over at the Overture, and it was really a wonderful exhibit. I was told that our opening received a population of more people than any other opening had received. So we were really happy about that. Plus, my daughter Elena Terry with Wild Berries had food, and my uncle Elliot Funmaker was there with performance. So who would want to miss that party anyway? But this is a more contemporary piece. It doesn't have really a specific design component to it that relates to any traditional design configurations or symbols, but it's something that I've been playing around with in terms of the use of different colors and textural qualities. A series that I'm really proud of now that I'm doing is the portrait series that I'm doing with porcupine quills. I've been told by museum curators across the country that I'm the only Native artist that's doing portrait art using porcupine quills. This was the first one that I did. This one is called Ode to Lillian St. Cyr. If you're not familiar with Lillian, she was under, I'm trying to think of the director, DeMille. Cecil B. DeMille was her director, and she was a silent film actress, the first Native silent film actress in the 19-teens. So I've read her story and I've done research on her. I was really fascinated by her during my college days. And it was one of those things where, you know, I taught for 30 years. I was also a principal of a program for about 10 years. And all while I was doing this administrative and education work, in the margins of my notebooks were all these sketches of things that I wanted to do in the future when I could actually get to my art. So this portrait is one of those. So I received a wonderful prize, a purchase prize at the Eiteljorg, and this is now in the permanent collection of the Eiteljorg Museum in Indianapolis. This is the piece that I did in honor of my uncle, Mike Winnebago. It's called My Chief Is Not Your Mascot. I think to me, it holds such an important place in terms of my creative journey, because I've always wanted to recognize people that have really inspired me and helped me in my growth as a Native woman and a Native artist. And my uncle Mike was a wonderful leader, bloodline chief of our tribe. He passed away way too early. We lost him way too soon. But while he was here walking the planet with us, he instilled a lot of knowledge and inspiration to many of us. And like some of you might have gone recently to the Nishla powwow that happened at the end of the month. If you would have seen us back in the day when Mike and I were dancing around the arena, we weren't like dancing and looking at other people's outfits or talking about what, whose fry bread stand had the best taco or anything. What we'd be talking about is quill work. So he inspired me, and this is something that I really wanted to do to honor him. I also have been blessed with a wonderful fabrication and installation team to bring public art installations to the work that I do. And I tell you, this is really a team effort. I started Little Eagle Arts Foundation 10 years ago, and we've been doing well. We're a small Native-run arts organization, and we, on an annual basis, work collaboratively with places like Aldo Leopold or the Nature Center at Maa Wákąčąk to do our educational programs. And we've had a couple educational programs out here at Badger at our studio. So that's pretty much how we've been able to maintain our presence, is through grants and teaching those fee-based programs. Well, COVID did to us just like they did to all of you. It was lockdown. So when COVID happened, my biggest fear as the administrator of LEAF was that we'd be folding, because we just didn't have the funds to kind of keep us going. Lo and behold, however, I had put in interest in a public art installation on the Great Sauk State Trail before lockdown happened. And I was just like overjoyed when Lindsay over at Rivers Arts contacted me and informed me that LEAF had won the commission for that piece on the Great Sauk State Trail. So it was Maa Wákąčąk, Sauk County, and River Arts that saved the day for LEAF. I don't think we'd still be in operation if it wasn't for this. So this piece is called Earth, Sky, Water. Amongst the Ho-Chunk people, we have our clan system. There are 12 different clans, and some clans belong to the earth, some clans belong to the sky, and some clans belong to the water. I myself am Eagle Clan. So when I introduce myself to you, my Ho-Chunk name is Chakshap Hyungenga, which means Eagle Chiefess in English. I'm of the sky. My mother, her Ho-Chunk name was Sane Menanka, sitting in the glow. She was a Bear Clan. Her clan is of the earth. So with that different configuration, what we did for this project is really to enhance our interpretation of what it means to be Ho-Chunk and what it means to interact with this land here at Maa Wákąčąk. So we worked with 4 different Ho-Chunk families. I told them to explore and have fun, think about family names that they might want to, detail out of clay and underglazes, to bring that name alive. It might be different things that they're seeing in the prairie. Like I know we have a mimike, a butterfly somewhere in there. And they did a fabulous job. And we were all following safe protocols. So everyone was masked. I even had that clear visor thing on my face. We had everybody working outside. No one got sick. We were able to have the unveiling in October, and it was just wonderful. And the piece, you'll notice, has solid areas here, and then there's spaces in between, okay? If I was your art teacher for tonight, I'd describe these pieces, the solid pieces is the positive space, and the places that are empty is the negative space. The reason why I, as the designer of this piece, included both is because of the history that Ho-Chunks have had on this land. You have to acknowledge the negative in order to fully appreciate the positive. So when you walk down and you see that piece, which is roughly, what, 1.5 miles from here, maybe? Think of that when you see it. Acknowledge that those windows in between represent the history of Ho-Chunk people, the good stuff and the bad stuff. But we need to acknowledge both in order to really appreciate all the wonderful creativity that was put forth by the families. And the wonderful thing for me personally is those stem walls that we use to support the piece. That actually, it was told to me that possibly that could have held the nitroglycerin on campus when the property, no? I'm seeing somebody shaking his. Oh, okay. Okay, so it was fuel oil, but I was thinking to myself, if it was nitro, when my dad worked here, he handled the nitroglycerin. So, but maybe he went out there for fuel oil too. I don't know. But it was just cool to have that commonplace space relationship with my dad, because I was really a daddy's girl back in the day. Some of you guys might be familiar because I know some helping hands helped us to put this one together. This is Maa Wákąčąk Sacred Lake. This is in the middle school in Baraboo. It's a 5-panel piece. So this one I think is a 20 foot by 8 foot tile piece, mixed media. So it has copper, wood, and high fire stoneware clay tiles. My wonderful husband does all the framing and things for us. So we're a dynamic team and doing creative things, but it really depicts the story of the origin story of Maa Wákąčąk, how it was created, the battle between the water spirit and the Thunderbird, and the Thunderbird prevailed. And of course, they use the Thunderbird as their mascot there at the school district. This year's installation, we had 2. We did one for the wonderful friends and neighbors over at the International Crane Foundation. I just love George and all the work that he does. And, you know, I've always admired the way the Crane Foundation have worked here in Sauk County, because I know some organizations these days are looking to create what they call their land acknowledgement statements. And, you know, it's one thing to do a land acknowledgement statement when you don't have any interaction with Native peoples. And it's another thing to do a land acknowledgement statement when you really work in consort with Native peoples. And the latter, the consort, the working together, community building is what the Crane Foundation is all about. So when they asked me to design an installation piece for them, of course, how could I refuse? They're wonderful people. It gave us an opportunity to share a story of the Ho-Chunk people, which is the call of the crane. So it was told to me by my nephew that he learned from his father that the sandhill crane and their migration is very significant for Ho-Chunk people. Can I get the slide to advance, please? This is a piece as it just got installed. What was it, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, something like that? So when the cranes call out to us, when they migrate up north and they call out to us in the spring, that symbolizes and indicates to us it's time to get out our seeds and get our soil propagated and get everything ready. Get everything ready before, you know, the last frost happens, and it's time for us to sow our seeds. And then when they prepare for migration in the fall, they call out to us again. And that call is for us to gather up our Ho-Chunk baskets and to harvest our melons, harvest our squash, and harvest our corn. So that's what the story depicts. And it's just wonderful, the placement where they chose to put it, kind of interfaces with a couple of the really wonderful trails there on campus. And yeah, it's just lovely. And then the last one that we put up this year is over at a private school called the Wingra School. Wingra was an interesting community, and I won't tell you too much, but Wingra is based on the word that Ho-Chunks use for duck, which is wink. It's got a and a. Can you say that? Wink. Wink. So if I was talking about a wink, a duck, I would say winka. So that's what they heard the Ho-Chunks, the place name. So that's why that lake was called Wingra. Mhm. Okay, that's their story. So I thought, it'd be great to engage the 100 students that are there. So they helped us to make all the clay tiles. Our wee little ones, kindergartners and first graders, did all the border tiles, and the other kids did the others. And I myself, my forte is these 3-dimensional pieces. And in this case, it was Canadian ducks or Canadian geese. And it just turned out really wonderfully. So this is in the foyer of their school. And we must have done a good job because they asked us to come back and do another month-long residency in the spring. So we're looking forward to engaging more with the Wingra community. All right, the last slide. So we do have some upcoming events. If you guys want to actually see some real art besides what's on the back, we are doing a pop-up market at Fermentation Fest this year. If you've never gone to Fermentation Fest, you need to go. This year is just a weekend. Next year again will be the full 10 days and the 50-mile tour. This one is going to be happening at that really wonderful spiritual place called Whitwin Park. So hopefully we'll see you there on the 7th and 8th. We'll have 6 artists from our Leaf group that will be demonstrating and selling their work there. And then this will be the 2nd year that I'll be on the fall art tour. I will be at our Maa Wákąčąk Art Studio, which is just a stone's throw from here, the old firehouse here at Badger Ordnance. And the fall art tour takes place Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the 20th through the 22nd of October. And I really look forward to seeing you guys come out there. It's just, last year we had almost 1,000 people come to visit. I mean, go figure. I would have never thought that because it was my first year. So I'm really grateful to the committee who decided to jury me in to the show because it's really wonderful. So before we go, I want to teach you a couple more Ho-Chunk words. Pinagigiwi. Pinagigiwi. You have done something good for all of our well-being. Egi waini ganapshna. Waini ganapshna. Thank you all. So thank you, everybody. One last thing I want to say while we still have an audience of people that they've been collecting names of Ho-Chunk people that have worked here at Badger Ordnance. I don't know how many, Ori, you said you had 20 or more so far? So if any of you guys listening or here in the audience know of other Ho-Chunk people who have a relationship, we'd love to have that information. So that would just help to beginning of that community building. Thank you.
Donna, do you mind taking?
Oh, no, not at all.
Are there any questions from the museum?
Yes.
Language question. The lodge of the Ho-Chunk speak a older version dialect of Ho-Chunk language. What is the current dialect of Ho-Chunk language?
I'm not sure what you're talking in terms of dialect.
We translated, my wife for 3 summers, Harold Jones Funmaker.
Oh yeah, here's my
song,
toka.
And your office, Ho-Chunk, digitized them.
Wonderful.
But we're trying to translate some because his English wasn't that good. And we're looking for a person that could translate. If there's somebody up in Black River Falls, we'd like to visit them.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I'm not an employee of the Ho-Chunk Nation, but I would recommend that, you reach out to someone in heritage preservation. And we do also have a tribal member in the Ho-Chunk way. She's my daughter, Angelica Greendeer. She teaches Ho-Chunk language for the Baraboo High School. So there might be a local resource. But when you say dialect, I think what you're referring to is Choka Jones used words that aren't currently used anymore in the vernacular of the language. So there's
Lodge oriented.
Yeah, and some are medicine lodge more specific. So yeah.
What about the language today? Who are you teaching?
Who am I teaching?
Or
Well, first of all, I'm teaching myself because I'm not a fluent speaker.
is the Ho-Chunk children being taught the language at all?
Like I said, there's almost 700 Ho-Chunk people here just in the county. I think probably those that are attending Baraboo School District, especially the high schoolers, they had the option of choosing Ho-Chunk as their language elective, but it's not required of them. And, you know, for me, as far as someone who was raised by a fluent speaker, once we lose our language, we lose our identity, because there's so much about our language that encompasses and speaks to us, not just intellectually, but to our spirits as well. And so, you know, we are putting forth and I can't speak for the Ho-Chunk Nation government or its divisions or programs, because like I said, I'm not an employee. But from what I see in terms of the programs and my relatives that are engaged as teachers, they're doing a fabulous job. And just, you know, if you want a keen app on your phone, look up Ho-Chunk Dictionary, put it on your phone or look it up on your laptop, and it's got it's a great body of work. Yeah, you'll enjoy it.
I think I saw a hand behind. Actually, I have 3 questions.
Okay.
First of all, when you said you were teaching worldwide, what were you teaching? Were you teaching art?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And sometimes it's art more related to, you know, just the basic foundations of art. And sometimes it's an opportunity for me to engage with the cultural arts as well.
You said you quills from live and how do you remove them from the live?
Well, the way I was taught by my Dega, my uncle Howard Windlow, he was in the service and always drove around with these green army blankets in the back of his truck. Those wool blankets have a real tight weave. You're out in the field, out in the bush, you see a porcupine and they don't run fast. We jokingly call them old people food because you can run up on one. But if you run up on one and you throw that wool blanket over and you pull it off, it'll be covered with thousands of quills. So the average North American porcupine adult has about 30,000 quills on their body. And they come in all different lengths and gauges and things like that. So for me as a quill artist, the first thing I have to do is sort them.
Do they grow back
Yes.
within the next year?
I'm not sure. I don't have a biology background. Yeah, but maybe some of you guys are familiar with porcupines.
And then what is brain tan?
Brain tanning is using the natural proteins of the matter found in the head of the animal to process the leather. Ordinarily, what we do here in the United States, most of our places that will process deer skin, they take all the raw hides, they put them in a shipping container and they send them over to China. And China exposes these beautiful hides to these awesome, awful chemicals that just rips off all the flesh and the fur and things like that. And what those chemicals do as they're curing the hide is they close up the pores, okay? And then that's the leather shoes and stuff that we're using for our commercial products. Whereas with brain tan, we're carefully removing the hide from the animal as we butcher it. We're carefully removing the hair and the flesh on the inside. We're exposing the thin skin or the hide of the animal to a formula of mostly water and the brains of the animal, the natural proteins in buckets, big buckets, submerging the whole hide. And what you're doing is you're kind of forcing that fluid to go through the pores of the animal. So when you're done, you're drying it, you've got this wonderful fiber that, like when I sew with my needle and thread, it's like sewing on butter. It's just soft and wonderful. Whereas if I went to Tandy Leather and got a commercial deerskin, it's like almost impossible to get a needle through it. So,
Thank you very much.
yeah. Yes.
Melanie, I have a question. I think I learned this from you. I don't know how much you can speak to it, but you said by the Maa Wákąčąk Studio, there were plans to have a Three Sisters garden. Is that still in the works?
We had a Three Sisters garden
Okay.
up until last year.
Uh-huh.
So Lightning, the person who makes our Chipotle case, he just took everything down. So we're getting a new one put up before the fall art tour. Yeah. Are we good?
Yeah. My dog Charlie only had 35 quills in his body, but they were all right in his face. Yeah.
And they don't learn after that.
No, I hope he does.
Yeah, me too.
So, what a great way to kick off this new season of lectures. And thanks so much, Melanie.
You're welcome. Thanks
It was
for asking me.
really, really enlightening. I thought it was a great thing. I think everybody else here probably agrees.
Cool.
So thank you.
We're still.